Hello and welcome to Widowed AF. You're here with me. I'm your host, Rosie Gill-Moss. On Widowed AF, what we do is I invite members of the widow community to come on and tell their stories. And they do so bravely and so eloquently, and it continues to be an enormous honour that I get to do this. And one of the great joys of this job is that I get to speak to some incredible people, and I get to speak to people from around the world. And today, my guest, Adriana, is direct from New York State. Hello.
Hi. Thank you
Hi,
for having
sweetie,
me.
and welcome. We're both a bit nervous today, aren't we? So we're going to go really gently on this one. Now, I will tell the listeners that you are currently awake at 5 o'clock in the morning to record this interview. So thank you. That is a great commitment to the podcast. I admire that. So, Adriana, I know very, very little about your story. I know that your husband was called Jason, and I know that he died from an asthma attack, which, I'll be honest with you, put the fear of God into me because my eldest son has asthma. And I had an email from his school on Monday saying, oh, can you please make sure Monty has his asthma pump? And, he, I've been nagging, he's nearly 15, nag. And I literally took a picture of your application, sent it to him and went, please find your asthma pump.
Oh, no.
So I'm interested to hear about this. I'm interested to hear about Jason and how you met and how old he was. I want all the information. So why don't we kind of go back to the beginning and you tell me a little bit about how you guys met?
Sure. So Jason and I met in 2018. Mm-hmm. I was working at a soundstage studio that recently merged with another company, and he was hired in that new company as the equipment rental for the studio. So I remember when he walked in, I was reception. When he walked in with the owner of that company, I felt like I had seen him before. It was one of those moments where you just like stop and stare, like, wait a minute, do I know you? But then he said his name and I'm like, no, I've never met a Jason. But I'll never forget that moment, just for that familiarity.
Yeah.
And so that was in September of 2018. And then by November 2018, I became more aware of him. There was a snowstorm that nobody was expecting in the area. And it was pretty massive. Like there was traffic that was not moving for hours. So by the time my shift ended, I tried leaving work and only made it a couple of blocks before I just pulled over, parked, and then walked back to the studio. And he was working like the later shift and offered to drive me back to my car when he was done. So I thought, okay. So I stuck around and then he drove me to my car and we got to talk very briefly, but it was a moment where I was like, I think I'm curious about this person. Mm-hmm. And a few weeks later, we were assigned a project together and we got to talk more. And so the soundstage studio, I saw a lot of people from New York City and from people from California. It was like the film industry. So I met a lot of personalities.
Sounds like a pretty cool place to work.
It was very fun. It was very cool. It was my first real job out of college. I was 24 at the time and he was 39. So there's a big age difference. Yeah. So
I like an older man too.
Yes. So when we got to work on the project, I realized, well, wow, he's not the personality that I've met before in this industry. He's got a pretty down-to-earth personality and he seems engaged with the topics that I'm interested in. And ultimately, I realized that I wanted to talk and hang out with him more outside of work. So it took about a month and a half, but I asked him out after the new year. And the rest is history. We had our first date, and
you asked him out.
I asked him out because
you're a modern woman. I like
it. Well, he wasn't quite catching the signs, so I was like, I just need to know for sure. Are you interested in that? No, but that I asked him if he wanted
to. 24-year-old babe wouldn't be interested in this man who was pushing 40, right?
That's what it was. And the story that he told me is that there was a long walk from where I asked him out to his warehouse, his office. And that whole time it was just like mouth drop. He couldn't believe it.
And do you know what? I'm going to tell you because I don't know whether you've heard me say this before, but when I met Ben, it was at work and I was a receptionist. I was at university and I took a part-time job and I walked in for my interview and this guy walked past me And you know, that sort of Hollywood, for people who are just listening, there's no audio, you won't see my head turn, but you know, that real kind of like over your shoulder look. And it took a while for us to get together. He went off and set up business in France. But I remember that moment, our eyes locked, and thinking to myself, I was in a relationship, he was in a relationship, nothing happened. But it was that real, oh, it's like the Hollywood spark, right?
Yes. That's crazy to me, but I asked him out, and we went on our first date, and I just knew then on that first date, like I was right, my hunch was right. We held hands, and it felt like home. But I didn't realize that at the time. You know, hindsight made me realize that. But
I wish I didn't know how this story ends, actually, because this is really lovely.
So we had the whole 2019 together as a normal couple in a normal world. And then we made our year anniversary in January of 2020. And I remember on our anniversary reading a headline about coronavirus and it coming from like China into the west side of the country. And I was like, that's weird. And then a month and a half later, the whole world shuts down.
Boom, right?
Yeah, boom. So that's relevant because we had just gotten a new apartment, and it was quite a story to get to this apartment. And we were just stuck together in this huge, enormous 10-foot ceiling apartment with 3 bedrooms. It was like something we found like within a week, and we needed to leave right away. And it just felt like, oh my God, are we trapped in a castle? Like, this is amazing. And so
how did you find that in New York, right?
Yeah, well, we were in New Jersey. That's where we met. I'm sorry. And I felt like that time in quarantine really accelerated our relationship. It really took us through all the challenges that could be normally spread out over a couple of years. And we were forced to see each other every day, every minute of every day. And like,
Pressure cooker,
that
right?
was, yes. Yeah. It brought up a lot of, hey, I think you need to work on this. And it brought a lot of like, hey, you know what? Like, I think, you know, we should do this instead of that when we bump heads or, you know, things like that.
Did you have, was your were your communication skills quite good anyway? Because I'm thinking fairly new relationship 24/7 together. You've sort of got to communicate or it's never going to work, right?
Yeah. And, well, for me, it was my first serious relationship too. So it was a whole
You're
new
figuring it
learning
all
experience.
out.
Yeah. But he was very patient with me and had more experience in relationships than I did. So he was very gentle with me, but also wasn't perfect. And to fast forward, by the end of the summer, we realized we didn't want to go back to our jobs, and he had property in New York State, and we just thought, why don't we just go back there? So I moved to this house, not ever seeing it, never having been here, and just trusted. And we basically lived that way like 24/7 until the very end, because I found a work from home job. And then a couple months after that, he started working for that same company. And so we were just working from home for the same company and always together. So by 2021, we realized like, hey, do you want to have a baby? Like, he was already 40, and I felt pretty mature enough to become a mom and live that life. So I got pregnant by the end of the summer, and that was so much fun. It was so much fun to just go through all of that with him. And at the same time, I had a best friend who was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Oh,
So
gosh.
I was 27. And by that point, I had never grieved. I remember asking Jason, have you ever been to a funeral? And he goes, yeah. Have you? And I'm like, no, that never experienced grief. So with her, we didn't realize it was terminal until I was in my 3rd trimester. And I was just her maid of honor a couple months before. So it was a pretty emotional experience by the very end. And the day that I gave birth, she passed away within the hour. So when I got the call, he was there for me and just held my hand through the whole process. And so he's a big part of the memory of my first grief experience.
What was your friend's
So
name?
Kimberly.
Kimberly. I think the grief that we experience when we lose a best friend is something that we don't really talk about. There's no word for it, is there, that when you've lost your best friend? One of my former guests, Jen Platt, she talks about her best friend dying in a car accident prior to her husband dying and how it brought up all the trauma. And weirdly, my best friend died very suddenly when he was 23. I was a little bit older. And that was my first experience of grief, really. My grandparents were still alive at the time. And going to the funeral of a young person or experiencing the sudden loss of a young or a degenerative condition of a young person it's enormous. And I'm thinking, you've just had a baby and you're having to process that, you poor thing.
Yeah, it was very difficult. And by then I knew she was dying. We knew it was terminal. And the closer I got to my due date, the closer it felt like it would line up pretty closely. And I was not expecting it to be at that way. And I think I mostly cried because I was watching the clock when she passed, before I knew she passed, because I was waiting for my C-section, my emergency C-section. And I remember watching the clock, and it just took me there. But Jason was there by my side, and I was never depressed because of him. And he was just a very funny part. He was wickedly funny. He was so good with words. He was so intelligent with his humor. So he really helped that process of accepting that she was no longer around officially. But he was also such a great support system in my postpartum with the baby.
What did you have?
I had a boy. I have a boy.
Yeah, you still have him.
Yeah, so he's still around.
You can't sell them on eBay. I've tried.
No, I can't return him. But he I remember him putting it into words that made sense for me. He told me it's cosmic. It's like cosmic that she passed the way that she did, and you gave birth the way that you did. And that has always stuck with me. So 14 months later, we're in June of 2023, and I'm like 9 months of no sleep, really, like just on and off sleep.
I remember it well.
Yes, it was pretty hard, but adding on top of that, where we live, we're about an hour and a half from my family, and his family is pretty small, but they were also about that same time frame. His parents in another state, so we were doing everything by ourselves all the time. And he had asthma, and has always told me like his parents never stopped him from doing anything just because he had asthma. They let him play sports. They let him do all kinds of things. So he was never afraid of his asthma. He knew how to handle it. And his asthma was severely triggered by allergies. So he would get pretty sick, like heavy sick, around May, our time. When the trees would blossom, all the trees coming back.
Good high pollen season.
Yes, there you go.
Mushroom
I'm not familiar
here.
with allergies. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the trees, and we are surrounded by trees. So he didn't get sick that year at his usual time, which is May, but wound up getting sick in June, just around Father's Day, mid-June for us. And it was starting to get pretty serious, where I knew it was different, but I never could say anything or do anything to help him with his asthma. It's just something that, like, he always told me, I there's nothing you can do. It's just something I have to let pass. So I always felt like I just had to watch him be sick and let him handle it.
I'm sorry, just to interject that. What when you say he was sick, what did that look like? Would it be a sort of wheezing, shortness of breath? Yeah.
Wheezing, shortness of breath, lots of coughing of phlegm, I think. That's pretty much the main symptoms. And then he would get pretty restless if he took
steroids.
Called steroids.
Yeah.
Yes. So he would always try to avoid the steroids because it made him too hyper. And I noticed like, he's a little different.
I took my son to hospital once and they gave him steroids, and it was like I'd got a small drunk with me. He went from being,
yes,
listless to, running around and ricocheting off
yes.
things.
They really do respond to the steroids that way. It's kind of comical. My son now has asthma, and I had given him the steroids, and I was like, whoa. So
let's come back to that later, because that's something we want to talk about as well. So sorry, I've interrupted you. Right, as you were.
No worries, no worries. So he was sick, and it was only sounding worse. And then I would tell him, hey, I think, it's been 2 weeks. And he would use his humor to just brush it off like, no, it just started yesterday. And I'm like, playing jokes with me, but I guess trying to lighten it up that it's
be like, no, I've
don't
been
worry, like I'm
cough
handling
for weeks. Trust me.
Yes. By this time we were getting a lot of notifications about the air quality. There were some Canada fires that were pretty intense and pretty close to our area. And there were a few days where it looked like the end of the world. It was like orange and just a lot of smoke in the air.
Wow.
We did not realize that that was an issue for him.
Why would you?
We had no idea. He had never been in an air zone like that. So we just thought this is his regular asthma yearly sickness, but it's happening in June. Long story short, like I said, we're far from our family, and by that point we weren't getting a lot of help. So there was a weekend that my mom was able to watch my son, and Jason and I could have the weekend together. And the plan was to put our son's room together so that him and I could finally get our room back, and he could sleep with me, because by then he was sleeping on the couch.
I also remember that well.
So thank you. And this is all relevant because I think you're going to understand the pain that I felt afterwards. But so by then we were bumping heads a lot, and I think it was just pure exhaustion and me not really being fully present because I'm not properly sleeping, and I'm not letting my mind rest, and that was affecting like my memory and just all this stuff, my undiagnosed ADHD that I've learned. I think it's undiagnosed, but I learned after the fact that, oh my God, I think I have ADHD. And that would explain my intense postpartum.
There's something to do with grief, childbirth, that exacerbates these symptoms. I want to speak to an expert about it, because there is the number of people I speak to who are widowed and have been diagnosed or have a self-diagnosis. It can't be coincidence. There must be something. I don't believe it causes it, but I think if you have it, it sort of exacerbates it. I might be wrong. I'm not a doctor. Well, maybe I will.
I would love to hear that episode. So we had a weekend, and we started off on what seemed like a good foot. And here's where things for my grief started to really open up my mind to the possibilities of like more than what we can see and understand. But he started talking about how he has no life regrets, and that, as tough as it was in his early life, like he failed out of college and was pretty bummed about that. And because he was a smart man, was going to school for biology, and just failed out his first year, and then went to film school. And I think that experience like never left him. So he was just talking about like, I have no regrets because it led me, it brought me Parker. Parker's our son.
Nice name.
And I remember when he said that, I was like, well, I have no regrets because it brought me you. Like
yeah.
We were bickering like that, where I felt like, but you love me, right? It was just so he said that, and anyway, the plan was that Saturday to build our son's room, and I told him like, hey, I'll do this and that, and you can do what you want to do, and then you can come in after I'm done with all of this stuff. he was playing video games. He was a big video gamer, and there was like a special event going on that day that was only happening that day. So I was like, that's cool. I understand. We don't get our me time as often. So I'll do this while you do that. And then you come and help me. And for some reason, when it was his time to come and help me, his mood was different with me. It's like he didn't, it was like, I don't know, it doesn't even matter because we were tired. But we bumped heads at the end, and I just felt frustrated. And so I remember feeling like, I think I need to like step away and like step away from this and find me again, because we just keep bumping heads. And I let it go. I went to bed. And the next day I had a personal event that was just for me. And he was going to have the house to himself. And then I was going to pick up my son, and we were going to come back, and he was going to have his room. So we had our day. We came back. We're happy. We're fine. We made up. He was sick that morning, and I thought he had just recovered, but he got sick that morning. And something that I noticed all while he was alive was that if we got into a fight, he would get sick.
That's interesting.
So I learned that stress can trigger asthma too. But I never brought it up to him. I don't know why, but I never brought it up to him. I just noticed like, hey, I noticed like in my head that when we fight, he gets sick. And then I'll just brush it off. Like, no, I'm just making that up. So he was sick that morning that I left. That night we got back. Our son loved his room, slept the whole night in his room.
Wow.
And yes. And that night we got to be in our room, and I'm sorry if that's too TMI, but we had a really beautiful, like intimate experience in our room.
And no, it's nice to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it felt like one of our earlier times. It made me feel extra special that night.
Because you lose yourselves when you have a baby, don't you? You really do. And that sort of romance. And I just remember being angry all the time, angry that he got to leave and go to work. He was angry I got to stay with the kid. He'd walk through the door, I'd hand a screaming baby to him after he'd done a long day's work. You are like that locking of heads, and it's really tough, that bit of a marriage or a relationship, I think, really tough.
Yes. And a detail that I forgot to mention is that we went back to work, working from home. And for 6 months I did it. And I ultimately quit unexpectedly. I had just gotten promoted, and I quit. Yeah. And I quit. I had just gotten promoted, lasted a month, and I was like, I quit. I can't do this. And they were like, no. Hey, we'll figure something out. Why don't you stay part-time so you can focus on the baby, but you still have a job. So we had that pressure where our income was not what we were expecting. And I was working part-time. So I was very jealous that he got to stay full-time, and he seemed to be doing great. And I was happy for him, but I was also like mad at myself that I couldn't like handle this promotion. And
we're told, just aren't we, that we can have it all. We can be a mum, we can have the promotion, we can be sexy and fun, and we can do all of these things. And actually, we've been sold a bit of a lie. You can't do everything to the best of your ability.
Yeah, it was an experience and definitely a teaching moment, but thankful for the company that I work for. I'm still with them, that they did that for me, because I was able to just divvy up my energy where it was most needed at that time.
It probably says quite a bit about you as an employee as well, because they only would have done that if you were valuable, and they felt that they wanted you to stay. So I think that's something you can take from that as well.
Yes. Yeah. Because of all of that, I went to therapy. I started going to talk therapy, and I was seeing a therapist already before Jason passed. So that Monday, after that weekend that we had alone, he woke up still sick. And by this point, his cough sounded like something I'd never heard before. It sounded dry. Mind you, the air quality is still an issue. And his cough sounded like I started to feel pain in my own chest, the way that I was to hear him cough. And it was a rainy, gray day. He was in a bad mood because things were coming up. And I started to feel like anxious because I'm like, oh my God, we just had like a really nice night. I thought like this would boost our energy. And here we are like not in a great place. So I started to internalize that and just like, I'm doing the dishes and you can just tell when someone's angry and they're doing the dishes. So he came up and he just stares at me and I'm like, and he goes, what? And I'm like, you're not happy. And that makes me not happy. And he goes, I just want you to be happy. And I'm like, I just want you to be happy. So he's like, why don't you take Parker, go to the museum and just get out of the house. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so I did that, and that helped the mood for a bit. When I got back, normal day, normal routine. Our son goes to bed. And he asked me if we wanted to watch TV and have dinner. I said sure. And on a work night, we would normally just watch like 1 or 2 episodes. But this night we watched TV a little bit longer. And he's coughing and he's coughing and he's coughing. And he looks at me, and I'm not saying anything, but he looks at me and he goes, I know it sounds bad, but I can feel it coming up. And I'm like, okay. So we finished watching TV, and I'm ready to go to bed. I'm like I'm about to go upstairs, and he goes, I only have 2 nebulizer treatments left and I'm scared. And I remember looking at him and with pure exhaustion and with this like surrender of like, I know that I can't do anything. And I look at him and I'm like, don't die on me.
Did you actually say that to him?
I said that. And we just started to get ready for bed. And he goes, I'll just go to urgent care in the morning. And I'm like, okay. And so we're getting ready for bed. We're going like our different ways. And at this point, he starts to walk down the stairs to the basement, and I'm walking past the entrance. And from his back, I can just tell something was wrong. And I stop and I remember saying out loud, but maybe not loud enough. And I was like, are you okay? And he didn't answer me. And I'm like, okay, like he'll tell me if he's not okay. So I go to bed and I'm laying down, and I get his message from him, and he goes, sorry, I couldn't stop. It was getting bad there for a second. And I remember I wrote, it's okay. I get scared when you're sick. And he goes, it's just uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, good night. And I put a kissy emoji, and he sent me back a kissy emoji. 10 minutes later, I hear like just this flustering, and he comes into the room and gasping for air, telling me to call 911.
Oh my God.
And that was the beginning of the end. He goes back downstairs. I call 911, and I text his parents, let them know that I just called 911. He's having a hard time breathing. I think it's his asthma. And then I just hold his hands, and they're cold. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm just in this weird place of, I don't even know where I go, but I remember closing my eyes and just visualizing white light. I have a new age background. So I do that. And then I remember, oh my God, how are the ambulance people going to know where to go? Let me go outside and turn on the light outside. So I tell them I'll be right back. And I run, and I'm trying to figure this out. And I've lived here for 3 years, and I can't get this light on. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I hear a thud, and I'm like, so I figure it out, and I come back, and he's on the floor, and I call 911 again. I'm like, he just collapsed, and they tell me to start doing CPR.
Had you ever done CPR before?
Never. Okay. It is unreal what is happening at this point. And the ambulance arrives, and they work on him. They take him to the hospital. They tell me where he's going, and I wake up the baby. I have no choice but to go with the baby. I pack snack bags, pack him his bag.
Automatic pilot, thinking about what the baby's going to need.
Yeah, I call my mom. She goes, call your mother-in-law. I call my mother-in-law. Call your mom. It's like, I'm calling both of you. I don't know what to do. And my mom goes, do you want me to go? I'm like, I don't know right now. I make it to the hospital. They make me wait, tell me that they're working on him. And then the doctor comes out and tells me that that he didn't make it. And I remember looking at him like, you're kidding, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Like,
not
this is a
true.
really sick joke. Can you now tell me how my husband is? I'm so
Yeah, so I'm like,
sorry.
can I see him? Yeah, it it was unfair. It is unfair, and it felt it because of the postpartum issues and that weekend. It felt like a cruel joke,
Yeah.
and I thought, oh my god. The next day, I had a therapy appointment already scheduled, like before he passed. So I got to talk about it right away, and
Wow.
um, he died from an asthma attack, and and that was it. And I was like, an asthma attack, but he's so it took me time to realize like there was an air quality issue, and the way that his lungs sounded. I'm not a doctor, but his lungs have never sounded like that to me before, and I just imagine it had to have been that being the issue that we did not realize. And when I went back home and I saw he also probably had ADHD because he did not throw anything out and just was pretty messy with his stuff. Like he had a bunch of rescue inhalers, and he'd save them just in case there was like a little left. They were all at zero, all of them. And I was like, oh my god, started beating myself up. Like I could have went, instead of going to the museum that day, I could have just went to the pharmacy and picked up his medicine, but I didn't know that he was low. And just like trying to change the story of like how it could have been
Yeah.
different.
Trying to change the
And
narrative. Yeah. And I
yeah,
think that's all part of the kind of bargaining, isn't it? If I'd done this differently, I like with Ben, had I not said to him, why don't you go back scuba diving? Because like you, I was postpartum. Our baby was 6 months. It had been challenging. I also had a C-section, so you're quite incapacitated. And also, like you, we'd had this beautiful weekend. It was Mother's Day. You're around Father's Day. I was around Mother's Day. And Ben always used to say, you're not my mother. I don't need to do Mother's Day. And it was a kind of like a running joke. And this year and we had this beautiful weekend. And, we went to bed really happy and in love. And like you sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel after having the baby. And, we had other children, so we knew that we would get through it. But to get to that point, where you could start seeing the light again, and then to have your future taken from you it is cruel and it is unfair. And I feel really bad for you because I know how it feels.
yeah, and I felt guilty too,
Yeah, I
because I
get.
started sleeping again.
Oh, but you started to be able to sleep.
Yes, because he was now in his own room. I accidentally let him cry it out one night. My phone was on silent, and the crying it out method was what worked for him to now sleep through the night. And I was like, oh my god, now that I'm rested, I feel different. My head feels
Yeah.
different. And now he's not here, and I'm like, I just felt so guilty. And
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to, because
no,
everything
yeah,
you experience is completely normal with everybody that has a baby. But I also, I get it, all the things that you wish you could do and enjoy together. But I'm just thinking now, if you don't mind just talking a little bit about when you got to the hospital. So were you on your own, just you and Parker at this point? So how old is Parker now? I can't do the maths.
he'll be 3 in the spring.
So he obviously would have been far too young at this point to understand what happened. But what did life feel like when you went back? Because you've got to go back to the house where it happened, for starters. Presumably it's messy because you've had paramedics in. And I'm just thinking of this young woman whose one day life looks like this and the next day life looks like this.
Well, the house was already messy. We
New
couldn't
baby.
keep up with it. Yeah, new baby. I so I wound up telling my mom, like, please come. And that's a whole hour and a half drive for her. So when I left the hospital, I remember feeling like a bag of bricks. Like every step was so heavy, and I just could not believe that I was leaving and going home without him. And it's pouring, raining. It's pouring. It really felt like a horrible movie. And I remember packing my son and like, oh my god, it was, it was like the first markers of the rest of my life, and I just couldn't believe it. And it all just felt so heavy. So I got home, I put him to sleep, and just laid on Jason's robe in the dark until my mom got there. And when my mom got there with my brother, and my brother did the whole car seat arrangement, and my mom just sat in front of me in the dark quietly, and that was all I needed.
Yeah.
So that day was hard for obvious reasons, but I couldn't sleep until I wrote him a letter. I just wrote Jason a letter, and as soon as I did that, I knocked out.
What did you do with it?
Funny story. It was in a notebook, and then I never saw it again. And I was looking for it multiple times, and I'm like, I can't believe I lost this very, very important letter. So I went through months of cleaning out the house, because we never fully moved in. We moved our apartment into his already furnished house, so we had a lot of stuff. So I went through everything, cleaned and organized everything, and the last thing I left for myself to do was go through my notebooks. And the very last notebook, I found the letter, and so I took it out and I put it in our storage box of our memories.
I buried mine because it was just a stream of consciousness. I couldn't tell you what was in it. I think I was angry. Everything just came out, all the stuff that you can't say to anybody, even your therapist. It just all came out onto the page and then buried. So perhaps it'll be a time capsule in the future. They'll be like, who was this crazy lady? And what about things like funerals? Did you have to do that by yourself, or were his parents part of that?
His parents are angels. They came
Are they?
up
That's so nice to hear, because I hear some horror stories of in-laws.
No, they are amazing. They came up, they helped me, they stayed with me, stayed until they felt like, do you feel like you can be alone now? Because I'm alone still here. There's no family or friends around. Jason was an introvert, so we had no funeral. We just kind of just went the cremated route and kept it to ourselves, the whole experience. So all of that was simple. And after they left, I was now like living in the new world, and found the podcast. Finding this podcast really helped me. It's something about hearing other people's stories, what they have gone through, and not to compare, like, but more like just hearing another person's pain. Like, this pain is so unique, regardless of how you lost your spouse. It is.
And especially when you're young, because, my parents have got friends who are widowed, but I didn't. I mean, I do now. And it's the idea of, you can read an article about somebody, and a book sometimes feels too big to read. And the podcast, I mean, I still find it incredibly powerful. Like, just now when we're talking, we're like, oh my God, I did that. And it still surprises me that despite everybody's grief is unique. There's no doubt about it. You die from the same type of cancer in the same place, it would still be different. But the choices you make and the things that you go through afterwards, there are so many links and shared experiences that I just didn't even know about.
Yes. And it made me feel like I wasn't alone.
Yeah. Good. I mean, not good that you're widowed, but good that it made you feel less alone, because that's very much what it's meant to do. So in the immediate aftermath, you had quite a low-key funeral, sort of private ceremony. And then you've got to go back, presumably. I mean, it's a bit vulgar to ask, but was there life insurance, or were you left in financial difficulty?
So we were engaged, and in New York State, they don't recognize common law, so it made the transfer of assets kind of difficult. I'm still in the process, a year and a half out.
Sorry, it's just this idea that widows, if we don't have a piece of paper that legitimizes our relationship, that even if you've got children, that you just aren't taken into consideration, that you're having to fight. I could go on about this for a long time. So
yeah, and it thankfully has been a simple process, but it does kind of aggravate the grief when I have to call my lawyer or go to a court and handle all of this.
And it makes you feel like you're money grabbing, doesn't it? And you're not. You're just trying to provide for yourself and your child. Yeah. Yes, yeah. I ended up at the High Court for Ben. It was horrible.
Yeah. So now I'm in a situation now where until my son is 18, I'm kind of like restricted with where I can move, and Yeah, and it's not fun. And then I have been telling people like, do a life insurance, write a will, build a trust, like do these things. Like if you have children, just do it.
Yeah.
Because you
And you
never
know
know.
what? I didn't have a will and I didn't know Ben did. It was only when I went through, in fact, I rang his lawyer. He had one for work and I rang him and I just said, I don't suppose Ben had a will. And he did, but his will was made when he divorced his first wife. So everything was made out to his mum. So had we not been married, everything would have gone to his mum. Now, I would have had a cause to claim it. And I also have lovely in-laws, so she would have been supportive. But think about if they weren't, if there was a huge divide in the family. I mean,
Yeah.
this is where this is where people get mean and money corrupts. And it's a real, you don't want to worry about money. You want to worry about the fact that you've got a child who doesn't have their dad anymore. You want to worry about the fact that your life partner isn't here anymore. You don't want to think, shit, how am I going to pay the gas bill next month? But unfortunately, the world, as we know only too well, it just doesn't stop turning. The bills keep coming, the envelopes keep arriving. So it feels like an unnecessary cruelty. And I don't know what it's like in the States, but here, until I think it was last year, possibly the year before, if you weren't married, you weren't eligible for any widowed parent support for your children. I mean, it doesn't invalidate
Goodness.
you being their parent. It's just such a strange, archaic rule. So, did you manage to go back to work, or have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
you did. You said you were still
So
there. Yes.
yeah. So for the next 6 months, he died in June. I stayed part time until I could find my son into childcare, which happened by the end of the year. So the start of 2024, I went back full time and have been slowly digging my feet into this new ground.
Into this new world that we don't have a guidebook for or a translator.
No, no.
And what about Parker? Because I sort of scooped past that a bit because obviously he was too young to understand what death means. But even at that age, they will be aware that one of their primary carers is not there. When did you tell him? Is it just something that you've talked to him about for the last year and a half anyway?
I have talked to him since he was a baby. So
Mm-hmm.
when Jason passed, those early night, those nights, those first couple of nights that I would put him to bed, I would just talk to him, and I remember saying, "It's just me and you now. It's just me and you." By then, he was saying "Dada," and he'd see pictures and say "Dada," and I had to start to teach him to say like, "Dada's in our hearts." So that's our starting point. And now that he talks more and understands more, we don't say it as often, but if I ask, he remembers and
Mm-hmm.
he'll say he's in our hearts. So I'm like, okay, that seed is planted. He is slowly, now he's saying words like my dad, which before it was just dada. Now it's my dad. But he doesn't ask questions. I don't think he understands it quite yet, but I think we're getting there.
I think
When
school is often where it starts to, when they sort of make the connection. Hang on a minute, these children, their daddies aren't in their hearts, they're here. But also, I found that a lot of children come from families where the parents aren't together anyway. And so, my children have some will tell the fact that they've lost a parent, some won't. And it's something as they get older, they take a bit of control back of. But it's things like having to say to childcare, oh, by the way, my son's dad died when he was 9 months old. It has to be the kind of first thing you say to so many people, even many years after the event. My daughter changed schools in October, so I go to school, have the conversation, because what you don't want is for them to blurt out, oh, my daddy's in my heart, or my daddy's in heaven, or however they describe it. And for an unintended teacher to sort of go, oh, don't be silly. Because, of course, Tabby will be dropped off sometimes by her stepdad. And if the teacher doesn't know, then, and you sort of don't want them to be dismissed for it. And also you don't want the teachers to be like, oh my God, why did nobody tell me?
yes, right, right. I didn't think about that. I did it for childcare because it was recent, and I'm like, look, I'm
Mm-hmm.
struggling because X, Y, and Z. But I picked up tips on what some of the other widows on the show have talked about, like, and I kind of expect that he'll be at an age where he will ask, and then he'll probably go run off and play after I tell him,
Yeah,
like,
and you'll
so.
think he's a psychopath, and then you'll remember, no, I remember, this is normal.
Yeah.
And actually,
Yeah.
I'd plug my book, which hasn't actually got a publishing deal yet, but I have a book, and there is a whole chapter on children, because the question, what about the children, is almost universally the first question asked if you have kids. And it's so scary because you're faced with this, these little faces and these big eyes looking at you, and you have to break their heart first, and then you have to help support them through it. And I think with Tabitha, who was a little bit younger than Parker, she started having some play therapy now. I don't know whether I don't even know whether she needs it, but you just feel like you want to put all the kind of scaffolding and resources into helping them. So that's been, because I think also, traditional therapy is quite intense for a child, isn't it? To sit opposite somebody and talk about your feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got lots of pictures up and things, have you, at home?
It's funny you mentioned, yes, he was plastered everywhere afterwards. But recently, a couple of weeks ago, I started to take his pictures out of frames and put them in a photo album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you don't want to feel like you're living in a shrine necessarily, do you?
Yeah. And I want to invite people over, and I don't want it to feel like, oh, she is weird.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe you should open the door with like the black veil and some candles lit and really freak new guests out.
Yeah.
I think people are quite surprised when, they meet us and realize that that's not actually what being a widow is like. It's
No.
it's about making sure you've got money for groceries. It's about making sure your kids had breakfast. Yes, there's all that pain and grief, but particularly when you're a parent, you have to just keep fucking going, for want of a better phrase. And it's scary, but it sounds to me like you're doing a phenomenal job in a really, really difficult situation.
Yeah, yes. I hear that a lot, but I don't give myself the time to even
No,
acknowledge
and I
myself.
think we hear it, and we all say we don't like being called brave and resilient and strong, because they are things that we kind of ultimately weren't given a choice about. But the choice comes in how you deal with what you've been dealt. And, we have a choice, and that's to curl up with a bottle of vodka under the duvet, or to get up, go to work, to make sure our kids are getting to experience what is still quite a beautiful life.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that your son has asthma.
Yes.
How freaked out are you?
I'm not.
Oh, you're not? That's amazing. Good.
No.
Talk to me.
Well, Jason, I feel like Jason left me a lot of gifts and of memories, and one of them is how he talked about his asthma. He wasn't afraid of his asthma, so that made processing the passing a little bit easier, because I knew he wasn't afraid of it. He told me, like, I did all these things. I never let it stop me from living my life. So my only fear with Parker having asthma was not getting the diagnosis and like fighting for it and like telling his primary care doctor, I hear wheezing, like I'm concerned. And he goes, there's no official test. And I'm like, oh, can you hook me up with a doctor, a pulmonologist? So it took a couple of visits, but he finally heard what I heard and recommended a doctor. And we saw a doctor about a month ago. He prescribed the albuterol and the steroid. And once I started the steroid, his sleep improved and his breathing sounds better. And I'm like, all right, cool. Now I can chill, because now I have the medicine.
But it's a weird one, asthma, isn't it? Weirdly, as I said to you earlier, I was having a conversation with my son about it, nagging him about his inhaler. And I was saying, it's one of those things where you can't really get high on an asthma pump, but they're really restricted on selling it. So you have to make an appointment with the asthma nurse. That's about 4 months in advance. And, I am quite chaotic. I do have ADHD, and trying to remember, and then I'll miss the appointment. And so, yeah, it's one of these things that you don't think of as being dangerous. You think of it being something that you grow out of. And I suppose knowledge is power. You know what a severe asthma attack looks like. You know when to get him to hospital if needed. And all of those things are what will ultimately keep him safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm doing my best with it. It's still always nerve-wracking, but I do feel confident with the stories that I heard from someone who has it and passed from it. And I have thought, like, Parker's going to ask one day, how did his dad die? And when he's age appropriate and I can tell him, and if it ever scares him, I can tell him, well, look, your uncle and your grandfather have it, and look how long they lived, you know, and I could just explain like air
Yeah, and
quality
it's very
or,
rare
you
to
know,
die from it, isn't it? Particularly for a relatively young, healthy man. It's.
yeah.
Did they do a post-mortem or anything to look at his lungs? I'm thinking about the air. And was the air quality to blame?
I don't think that they could tell if it was specifically that, but it was inflamed bronchioles. So asthma. Yeah.
Gosh, such a terrible thing. Now, I'm just accumulating bits here because I'm always interested to hear if anybody said anything really weird to you when you're widowed. Like somebody said to my mum at Ben's funeral, "Oh, she's still young and attractive. She'll meet somebody." I mean, as it
Yeah.
happened, not wrong, but I didn't want to hear it that day.
Yes, yes. The comments about me being young and, oh, you'll find somebody came way too early for some people. And I thought, you have no idea what I'm going through. And that is the furthest thing from my mind. I'm not worried about that. I'm not even thinking about it. But it was typically kind of like that,
Yeah.
where I just felt like it's not really appropriate to say, maybe ever.
I think people sometimes are so fearful of saying the wrong thing, they just blurt stuff out. And
That's true.
it's just that kind of, I have to tell myself to do it. Just take a breath before you speak to somebody. And I found that people would ring me and howl down the phone at me and things. And I'd be sort of the carer of their grief as well. And I found that very overwhelming. And one of my many addictions really was my phone. I just used to spend hours because you'd be texting everybody and everybody would be replying, and anything I could do to run away from staring down the barrel of what had happened, I would do. Have you found any coping mechanisms, healthy, unhealthy? You don't have to share it.
Yes, yes. So because I was alone a lot, I had a lot of time to fill. If it wasn't with my son, who was an infant at a time, so like
Yeah, they're in
his
bed like
attention
7,
needs
right?
were different. Yeah. So I had a keyboard. I still have it, and I would just like play that. That was one of the healthy habits. One of the unhealthy habits was taking Tylenol PM just to get through sleep. Like sleeping was hard because of all the adrenaline at first, and then the fear, and then the just okay, now I'm awake and I can't sleep. Like I went through so many different stages with my sleep that was made it hard for me to sleep. So I relied on Tylenol PM.
Yeah, although I think in the grand scheme of things, it could have been worse. I too struggled to sleep, and I think some of it is it's the fear of waking up and having to relive what's just happened. And actually, probably the last 6 months, really, my sleep's even now. I mean, I'm older than you, so I take HRT and all sorts of things, but I do think this, and then your brain can't work, especially if you've got ADHD, and then everything feels so much harder. Sleep is everything, right?
It is, and the crying spells would really happen at night, and that would just really wipe me out. But then I couldn't sleep. It was just the way that those crying spells would affect my brain. I knew like, okay, there's something happening to me on a neurological level with grief, and I want to understand it, which led me down the path of ADHD and all that fun stuff.
And I'm just before I let you go, you just mentioned earlier on in the interview that you were raised, and what was the term you used? Oh, what was
It's
the
like New
term?
Age.
That's it. Yes. So,
Yeah.
just talk to me a little bit about what that means in terms of grief. Do you believe in an afterlife? Have you tried to contact Jason?
Quick story. Yes. So I made an appointment with a medium before Jason died. I never had an interest or an opinion on mediumship. Not even when my friend passed. But when he died, I was desperate for contact. So I found a medium that was local to me. And it was very clear to me that he was there. So a couple months after that, the way that I filled my time for all of last year was I trained to be a medium. And
Oh wow,
yes, so I have
that's
taken.
amazing. I don't think I've spoken to anybody that's a medium. So
Yes, yes.
we're going to go off piece a little bit, but how do you train?
I found a mentor who is local to where I grew up. It all kind of felt like, wow, this path is very like obvious to me.
Serendipity.
Yes. So I found a medium who was training online, and I just would do practice sessions for people, and it turned out to be like I was already doing tarot cards and oracle cards, so and had a have a very heavy meditation practice, which is all key to being able to establish a connection. So it was kind of like I already had these tools, and I just needed to make a switch, um, and it has been a great experience. I've had a lot of sitters who had spouses, and I would connect them with their spouses, or I would have a lot of sitters who had fathers. It seems like I attract the spouses and the fathers.
And how does that feel to be able to sit with somebody that's grieving and to help facilitate contact, and whether or not people are believers, whether they're skeptics, whatever happens in that room, they believe that they're seeing them. Now I'm ambiguous. I've never seen anything to convince me either way. I'm open. I'm very open to it. My worry was that I would end up on a crusade to find him, that I would spend money, that it would become almost like an obsession. Mm-hmm. But for you to be in a room with somebody who, like, okay, let's pretend it's me and I didn't get to say goodbye to Ben. He died in a very tragic way. If you were able to facilitate me communicating with him, that would be the most incredible gift. And have you been able to give that to people? Wow.
Yes, usually it's the loved one in spirit doing most of the communication. By the end, when I ask, like, do you want to ask them anything? People are like, I wasn't ready, but it is why I became a medium, because that medium, he brought up that weekend that was pretty difficult for me in my grief process. He brought that up and brought up other things that were difficult for me, and gave me a peace of mind. And I feel like that changed the course of my grief.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that, I would be a different person today. So to be able to give that peace of mind to people is like, I'm full service. I'll do whatever, the spirit wants me to do to give that to their loved ones.
And because I am a bit naive about all of this, so what happens in the room? This is a very different podcast we're doing now, but let's just carry on. Let's just go with it.
Sure. So there are different mediumship styles. The style that I do is evidential. So what you would expect in an evidential mediumship session is when we sit down, we start off with evidence. So if I was doing a mediumship with you and it was Ben speaking, he would bring forward evidence.
And is that to sort of prove that they're there? And
yes,
yeah,
it's to validate that that person is speaking and is with us. And once you validate that, they just start talking, and they can talk about things going on in your life now. They can talk about memories, and it's all pretty relevant to what is happening to you now.
Because my mother-in-law, she went to see a medium. She lives on a little island off the UK called the Isle of Wight. It's very, very sweet. And she went to see somebody, and she sent me a summary of what Ben had said to her. And actually, I couldn't look at it because I've got a few walls up, And so what I did is I sent it to my best friend, and I said, can you just hold on to this so I can look at it when I'm ready? And I was going through a bit of a tough time. And I said, actually, I'm ready to look at it now. And it was tough because it was coming from Ben's mum. So the cynic in me is going, well, she knows the tone and the language he would use. But also, did she know the tone and the language he would use when talking to me? And, she weren't all together a lot. So, and some of the things, they felt like Ben. They did feel like Ben. Things like he'd said, apparently that that he understood that I had remarried, and that, yes, he was jealous, but he understood why, and that, he wanted me to be happy. And so I suppose for me, even though I'm still remain on the fence about it, that's what I want from him. I want him to say, God, you've done so well, girl, because before Ben died, he was my protector. And if you'd asked me, and probably even if you'd asked him if I would cope, we probably would have both said no. So I'd love some way for him to see that actually we're okay. Maybe I will explore it. Maybe I think you're so aware of how vulnerable you are. And I did go and see somebody actually, and they weren't any good. So that sort of, underscored my skepticism. I think you have to, it's like a therapist though, isn't it? The first one rarely fits.
It is. It is. And it's something that you just got to trust your reviews and your research and hope that it works out. But yeah, I do it professionally now. It's not often because I have a day job, but I do it professionally, and I do try to teach people. I don't want to convince, I'm not in the business of convincing.
No.
I just want to teach people what to look out for, what you can expect, at least with the style that I'm aware of.
That's so interesting. So if I technically was to come to New York, I could have my own one-to-one medium session, couldn't I? There we go. There's another incentive. You know that I do end up traveling to meet widows, so it could happen. I could end up on your doorstep any day.
Okay.
Turned up
I'd love to see you again.
a former guest house in Michigan, and I got an Uber from I mean, she knew I was coming. It wasn't a surprise, but I sort of turned up in the dark to this house in the middle of America, and I had that. What have you done? You've never met this woman. You've spoken to her for 2 hours on a Zoom call. We had a great time. But I think that's another part of widowhood. You just get a bit more, well, it's a cliche, but life is short, right? You got to do the things.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it has been really, really lovely to meet you today and to talk to you. And your story, as I said, they're all unique, but this one, I've not spoken to anybody with this kind of story. And you were so young, and you had so much ahead. And we mourn the loss, but we also need to mourn the future that you were promised. And it sounds like you and Parker have got it in hand, though, hey?
Yeah.
Just the two of you. Just the two of you. And for anybody who's listening out there and has been affected by this, if you want to drop me a message, you certainly can, and I can always pass it on as well. And if you are just listening and enjoying, please continue to do so. Leave us a like if you would mind, and a review. I hate asking for these, but unfortunately, it's the only way we get seen. And we do have an Instagram account, widowed AF, if you want to give us a follow. But for now, I will be back with you next week with another story from the coalface of widowhood. But from now, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you think someone else may benefit from this, please do share. We'd also really appreciate a quick review. It helps more people find the show. Thank you again, and see you next time on Widowed AF.